Brian Baker asks a question which I really like. Do you have days when you can't get in a creative mood? What do you do to get rid of the self-doubt and pessimism related to the creative process? So I got back from Australia this past Monday, 5 days ago, and the time change between here and Australia is such that I left Brisbane at 7:30 in the morning, and I arrived on Monday morning, and I arrived in San Francisco at 6:30 on Monday morning. And then my wife went off to do some work. And I was sort of alone in the house with all my jet lag, having, I've slept a few hours on the plane. It's a 14-hour flight. And then I came over to the cave. And coming over to the cave after a trip is always sort of like a reconnecting. It's like plugging in. At the same time, and when I come into the cave after I've been gone, I often get itchy to work. I miss this place. I want to jump back in. I want to pick something up and start to modify it. And when I'm super jet lagged, that impulse, I resist that impulse because it's not safe for me to work. I am super lagged. My brain is moving slower than I think it is. And I have less energy than I think I do. And I have difficulty with this moment because I have this ethos that if there's time to make something, I should be using it to make something. That like there's only a certain amount of minutes left in my life and I should be using them. I don't think that literally, but I know that's where my brain goes. It's like, don't waste time, start drawing, make another thing. And there are times when I've had such an intense week or circumstances are such that I come into the cave and I'm not feeling it. And you're right, the self-doubt and the pessimism really show up at that moment of like, maybe I lost it. I mean, this place is such this shop provides so much succor for me. The workbench is where I get to like meditate away the troubles of the world. It's where one of Sam Raimi's lesser-known films is For the Love of the Game, with Kevin Costner playing a down-and-out sports hero, which is my favorite Kevin Costner genre, pitching a perfect game as the last game of his career. And there's in it a repeated refrain where Costner, who's like, he's the dyed-in-the-wool professional who is at the tail end of his career, and he's sitting in a stadium full of people, and just before he sets up to pitch, he says to himself verbally, "Stop the mechanism." And the whole stadium goes quiet for his head. That's a magnificent physical description of the way I feel in this cave when I'm sitting at the bench. The mechanism stops, the noise of the world goes away. And I find so much succor from that when I'm in the cave and I don't feel like working, I feel guilt, I feel some shame, I feel like I'm not servicing this thing that I have built. And so I really try and go easy on myself to recognize this is a day when you don't have the energy to execute in the cave, and that's okay. Go home and read, watch a movie, have a snack, walk around. I've spent so much of my life treating this as a scarcity model, and I recognize for many people watching, your shop is a scarcity model because you have other things you've got to do. I'm really lucky. My job is being here. I feel so lucky for that. So I recognize that for much of my life, I had an experience that's similar to yours, which is the shop is the place you get to the least, but it's the place you most want to be. And thus, when you're not feeling it under those circumstances, it feels particularly awful because the same would happen for me. And so I try and go easy on myself in those moments. I try and let that be because my energy is finite, and there's no reason for me to get down on myself about not feeling like I should execute because my energy is in a different state. Yeah, that's ultimately my answer is when you can't get into a creative mood, it's okay. we're always waiting for the muse. We're always waiting for the thing. Actually, somebody wrote this one thing. Yeah. How do you approach a problem? Thorin Walton. How do you approach a problem you have no idea of the solution, something completely foreign to your experience? This was much of my experience on Mythbusters. I read until I have a thought. That's what I wrote. I read until I have a thought. And if I don't, so this is, I think I can connect this up to the cave experience of being in the cave and not feeling creative. What I mean by I read until I have a thought is I start to read, and at the beginning it's just a fire hose and all this information is coming in. I don't know this field. I don't know how it works. I don't know what the parameters are. I don't know what the physics are. But I start to read through them, and slowly as I read through them, the shape of this industry or this science or this technique starts to take a shape for me. And slowly as that starts to take a shape and I read more about it and I read more about it and I'll read some expertise and I'll read some, whatever material I can find, at a certain point in the reading, a little flag will tick at my brain and I'll have a question that is not remotely answered by anything I've read so far, or an observation that isn't connected to anything I've read so far. And that's when I feel like I have the first handle. I talk about it on a physical metaphor of like, that first thought is the handle that I grab to start to shake loose the concept for myself. But really what I've come to understand is that that first thought is the first time my point of view shows up and says, what about this part? I wonder if anyone's thought about that. And sometimes that doesn't come. Sometimes I'll read and read and read and read and nothing happens and I need to talk to an expert. Or I'll read and read and read. There are certainly other ways to execute that. But in the shop, when I don't feel the creativity, it's often because of my energy level. Sometimes it's because of my mood. And sometimes it's just that kind of day. I'll tell you the hardest one for me. I try and, because I like being a maker and a manager, but I don't like doing both at the same time. I try and make sure that at least one day a week is a no meeting day for me. And there have been times when I have a no meeting day outlined and I come into the shop and I'm not feeling it. And that feels like, whoa, you've shut out the world and you don't want to do something in here? What is wrong with you? And in those cases, I may just hang out in here and read. Or I may do shop infrastructure. That's the other one. I may just grab a shelf and take everything out of it and put everything back in a slightly neater way. The relationship that we have to these vehicles of our succor are complex relationships. The relationships we have to the places we go for self-soothing. They can take over our brains. And I mean, a lot of my partners have felt the weight of my shop on our relationship. Absolutely. And I have had to learn, and I've talked about this on the channel before, I have learned a lot over the years about building a balance between the work that I do here and the way in which I show up in my house and in my home and with my family. Because there were certainly whole periods of time where I'm over there, but I'm only thinking about what's going on here. And that's not balanced. I prefer to be in the space that I'm occupying rather than have my head in another space. But it took me a long time to come around to understanding that if I gave myself the space to be here or not be here, I also have the space to be or not be at home. And I've said recently that I feel more creatively satisfied doing this channel, talking to you folks, working with this team than I have ever felt in my professional or creative life, both of them. And a lot of that creative and professional satisfaction is because also I have built through hard work and listening a real balance between the work that goes on here and my home life. And again, I'm 57 and I feel like I, cracked some of these problems just a few months ago. It is a process. Scaled Creations, here's a couple of interesting questions. Scaled Creations says, Who is a maker that has most recently caught your attention in their skills, unique craft, and overall body of work? Someone you think is definitely checking out. And Patrick Hennessy says, thanks for introducing us to Nerdforge, Dave Fogler, and Laura Kampf. All 3 channels you should be checking out. Links in the description. Do other makers influence your builds? Yes, 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 yes. And I'm going to cover just a few here, 4 or 5. And I'm going to recover these in my favorite things this year and talk about them much more extensively. But right off the bat, I follow a bunch of different Lego channels and Lego builds. And recently, Brickbender has been blowing my mind. They are all of them are illegal builds. Almost all of them are illegal builds. And I will say, I've been burning through his videos for the past couple of weeks, and almost every single video gets a genuine gasp out of me, like a of just some of the forms he's able to bring out of illegal connections in Legos. Other folks who I love, Wristwatch Revival Marshall, I never tire of his avuncular manner, and specifically helping to demystify the mechanics of watches for me slowly over time. Chronova Engineering, who are clockmakers that recently built a steam engine that's about 5 millimeters on a side. I'm not kidding, 5 millimeters cubed, like the size of one of these squares on my arm, and they built a working steam engine. Incredible. And then very recently, I discovered the YouTube channel Breaking Taps. Again, doing stuff at a level of precision where here's the level of precision at Breaking Taps. Their scanning electron microscope is not the most precise tool they have. They also have an atomic force microscope, and they can read the variance off of the mean of a surface to the nanometer. It's crazy, crazy. Breaking Taps is also really, really fun. And then in podcasts, Joey Famelli, our producer here at Tested, introduced me to Tansy Gardam's podcast, Going Rogue, which starts with a 4-part series about the difficult and troubled production of Going Rogue and how it came to be. And then Tansy goes on to cover a bunch of other stuff. Again, I'll talk about this much more detail in my favorite things at the end of the year, but those are my high spots right now. T-Man 2217 says, hope you and yours are well. Thank you very much. Have you considered trying out other creative hobbies like blacksmithing? Dude, yes, 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 yes. Yes, I want to do blacksmithing. If you want to see me trying some blacksmithing, we have a series of me making armor with master armorer Terry English at his shop in Cornwall back in 2017. We can include a link in the description to those videos. I have a whole suite of blacksmithing tools in storage. I have an English wheel and a planishing hammer right above me. I have an anvil right next to my workbench with a whole bunch of stakes. And I do a little bit of blacksmithing here and there. I'm about to embark on a bigger, deeper blacksmithing project in the next few months with an amazing, famous blacksmith who is also a friend acquaintance of mine, and we have been chatting. So watch this space. There will be some blacksmithing coming up because I love moving metal, and I will at some point make myself a complete suit of armor. A real harness of steel armor, the real deal. That will be something I eventually do in my life. And I don't know when that's going to happen. There's only so many years left. Man, I'm 57. Thank you guys so much for watching. And I wanted to briefly mention that you could become a Tested member. I know everybody is competing for you to become a member of their thing. What I want to express to you is that the Tested membership has become such an important part of the Tested family. We get tremendous feedback from the Tested members, and they expand the stories that we can tell and the things that we have access to. And you can become a part of it right now by clicking on the link below. See you in the chat.